On a remote Bavarian farm, just days before its 6 inhabitants were brutally murdered, the family repeatedly reported hearing footsteps in the attic, footsteps from an unseen presence that shared their isolated home. This was not a premonition, but a grim reality, a violation that heralded the gruesome end of the Gruber family and their new maid, all slain with a single brutal weapon in a crime that remains one of Germany's most chilling unsolved mysteries. The Hinterkaifeck farm sat in stark isolation, surrounded by dense forest, a small world unto itself. Inside lived Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, a 72-year-old man known for his stern demeanor and sometimes volatile temper. With him was his 63-year-old wife, Cecilia. Their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, 35, also resided there with her 2 young children, 7-year-old Cecilia, named after her grandmother, and 2-year-old Joseph. The family had recently hired a new maid, Maria Baumgartner, 44, who had only been with them for a few hours. This small, seemingly ordinary household was about to become the stage for an extraordinary horror. But before the murders, a series of deeply unsettling events began to unfold, painting a picture of an encroaching terror. Weeks prior, the previous maid had fled the farm, claiming it was haunted. She spoke of strange noises, a pervasive sense of unease, and the distinct sound of footsteps in the attic. Then Andreas Gruber himself discovered a set of unfamiliar footprints in the snow, leading from the forest to the farm, but none leading away. He mentioned a missing house key, then later found a strange newspaper on the property that no one in the family recognized or had purchased. The family dog barked incessantly at night, staring into the dark woods. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a creeping prelude, a drumbeat of dread that the family, isolated and perhaps too proud, chose to ignore, or perhaps simply had no way to escape. The week after those chilling discoveries, on Thursday, March 30, 1922, the family was last seen by neighbors. The children had not shown up at school for a few days, and Maria Baumgartner had failed to appear for work in the nearby town of Weidhofen. A strange silence had fallen over Hinterkaifeck. On April 4th, Laurent Schlittenbauer, a local farmer who had some history with the Grubers, decided to check on them. He was accompanied by 2 other men, Michael Puhl and Jakob Sig. They found the farm gates open. The barn doors stood ajar, flapping gently in the spring breeze. A cold wind blew through the house. What they discovered next would haunt the small community for generations. Inside the barn, stacked carelessly with straw, were the bodies of Andreas Gruber, Cecilia Gruber, Victoria Gabriel, and 7-year-old Cecilia. They were arranged in a macabre tableau, covered with old blankets and hay, their eyes staring blankly upwards. Each had suffered horrific head trauma, clearly inflicted by a heavy, blunt object. The sheer brutality of the scene left the men stunned, frozen in a moment of pure terror. The silence of the farm was now imbued with a different, far more sinister meaning. Leaving the barn, the 3 men hesitated, a creeping dread preventing them from entering the house immediately. The front door was locked. Eventually, they forced their way in, their hearts pounding in their chests. What they found inside only deepened the horror. In her small bed, young Joseph, just 2 years old, lay dead, killed in the same savage manner as his family. And in her own room, just hours into her new job, lay the body of Maria Baumgartner, the maid. The full extent of the massacre was now tragically clear. 6 souls annihilated in their own home, seemingly without a struggle. The complete silence of the farm, which had initially hinted at an absence, now screamed of an unspeakable crime. The weapon, later found in the attic, was a pickaxe from the farm itself, its head covered in dried blood. The method of attack was chillingly consistent: swift, brutal blows to the head, delivered with immense force, suggesting a killer driven by extreme anger or a cold, calculated efficiency. The victims were killed in different locations, at different times, implying a meticulous, perhaps even patient perpetrator. Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and 7-year-old Cecilia were lured one by one into the barn, each met by the killer. Maria and little Joseph were found inside the house, suggesting they were killed later, or perhaps first, before the others were brought to the barn. The sequence of events hinted at a methodical killer, someone who knew the layout of the farm intimately, someone who perhaps even knew the routine of its inhabitants. What kind of person could execute such a precise, horrifying act, targeting an entire family, including 2 small children and a newly arrived maid? Perhaps the most chilling detail to emerge from the initial investigation was not what happened during the attack, but what happened after. Examination of the bodies indicated the murders had occurred on the night of March 31st, a Friday. Yet the bodies were not discovered until the following Tuesday, April 4th. For 4 days, the killer or killers had remained on the farm, surrounded by their victims. Neighbors reported seeing smoke rising from the chimney. Food had been eaten from the pantry. The animals had been fed. Someone had continued to live in that house, amongst the murdered, even sleeping in their beds. This wasn't merely a fleeting act of violence, it was an occupation, a grotesque violation of a home that continued long after the final breath had been taken. The thought of a killer calmly going about daily chores, knowing 6 bodies lay strewn around the property, pushes the boundaries of human depravity. The initial investigation was, by modern standards, catastrophically mishandled. In 1922, forensic science was rudimentary. The scene was quickly compromised by dozens of curious villagers and investigators, trampling through vital evidence, smudging fingerprints, and contaminating potential clues. The bodies themselves were hastily examined, with little thought given to preserving evidence. The local police, unaccustomed to such a horrific crime, were overwhelmed and ill-equipped. The initial questioning of witnesses was haphazard. Conflicting statements were taken, but rarely cross-referenced with the rigor required for such a complex case. In an era before DNA analysis or advanced ballistics, the absence of a clear motive or an obvious suspect immediately plunged the case into a murky labyrinth of rumor and speculation. The very first hours, critical for any investigation, were lost in a chaotic scramble, leaving a gaping wound in the case that would never truly heal. How many crucial pieces of information were unwittingly destroyed in those first bewildering days? The isolated nature of Hinterkaifeck meant the family lived largely apart from their neighbors, but not entirely. Andreas Gruber had a contentious reputation. He was known to be stingy and difficult. More disturbingly, there were persistent whispers in the village about an incestuous relationship between Andreas and his daughter Victoria, and even allegations that Andreas was the father of Victoria's youngest child. Such rumors, whether true or not, painted a picture of a family deeply entangled in its own secrets and conflicts, potentially creating a powder keg of motives, revenge, shame, jealousy, or even madness. The farm, a place of quiet industry, also harbored a hidden darkness. These unsettling claims, often dismissed as village gossip, added layers of complexity to a crime already baffling in its brutality. The initial investigation was, by modern standards, catastrophically mishandled. In 1922, forensic science was rudimentary. The scene was quickly compromised by dozens of curious villagers and investigators, trampling through vital evidence, smudging fingerprints, and contaminating potential clues. The bodies themselves were hastily examined, with little thought given to preserving evidence. The local police, unaccustomed to such a horrific crime, were overwhelmed and ill-equipped. The initial questioning of witnesses was haphazard. Conflicting statements were taken, but rarely cross-referenced with the rigor required for such a complex case. In an era before DNA analysis or advanced ballistics, the absence of a clear motive or an obvious suspect immediately plunged the case into a murky labyrinth of rumor and speculation. The very first hours, critical for any investigation, were lost in a chaotic scramble, leaving a gaping wound in the case that would never truly heal. How many crucial pieces of information were unwittingly destroyed in those first bewildering days? The isolated nature of Hinterkaifeck meant the family lived largely apart from their neighbors, but not entirely. Andreas Gruber had a contentious reputation. He was known to be stingy and difficult.
More disturbingly, there were persistent whispers in the village about an incestuous relationship between Andreas and his daughter Victoria, and even allegations that Andreas was the father of Victoria's youngest child. Such rumors, whether true or not, painted a picture of a family deeply entangled in its own secrets and conflicts, potentially creating a powder keg of motives: revenge, shame, jealousy, or even madness. The farm, a place of quiet industry, also harbored a hidden darkness. These unsettling claims, often dismissed as village gossip, added layers of complexity to a crime already baffling in its brutality.
Could the motive for such an extreme act be found within the very fabric of the Gruber family itself? Or was it an external force that finally tore them apart? One of the most intensely scrutinized figures in the aftermath was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the man who discovered the bodies. He had a complicated and deeply personal history with the Grubers. Lorenz was widely believed to be the father of Victoria's child, Josef. He had even tried to marry Victoria after her husband's supposed death in the war, but Andreas Gruber had opposed the union. Schlittenbauer had been involved in previous disputes with the family over land and money. His proximity to the discovery, his detailed knowledge of the farm, and his inconsistent statements during questioning made him a prime suspect for many. He was interrogated repeatedly, his house searched, his life turned inside out. Yet, no concrete evidence ever directly linked him to the murders. He remained a figure of suspicion in the public eye, despite the lack of proof, a man forever shadowed by the horrific events at Hinterkaifeck. Beyond Schlittenbauer, the investigation spun out, ensnaring numerous other individuals. Two brothers, Josef and Andreas Kaspar, former workers on the Gruber farm, came under scrutiny. They had been dismissed by Andreas Gruber months prior to the murders, reportedly over a dispute, and harbored resentment. During interrogations, they made some suspicious statements, and one of them even confessed years later, only to recant. Their alibis were shaky, but again, no definitive proof connected them to the crime. Another theory pointed towards a group of drifters or vagrants, common in post-World War I Germany, who might have targeted the isolated farm for robbery. Yet, nothing of significant value appeared to be missing from the house. There were also theories involving traveling tinkers, disgruntled former neighbors, or even political agitators. But each lead dissolved into speculation without tangible evidence. The list of suspects grew long, but the evidence against any single person remained tragically thin. Perhaps the most haunting and persistent theory centered on Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had been officially declared dead in the trenches of World War I. But what if he wasn't dead? There were unconfirmed sightings of a man resembling him in the area after the war, a man who might have returned to discover the incestuous relationship between his wife and her father, and the existence of a child that may or may not have been his. The idea of a husband believed lost, returning to exact a terrible revenge, was a powerful narrative that captivated many. However, no definitive proof of Carl Gabriel's survival or presence in the area ever materialized. The identity of this phantom figure, if he existed, remained as elusive as the killer themselves. It's a compelling idea, but a ghost of a suspect. If you are finding this deep dive into the chilling unknowns of Hinterkaifeck as captivating as the mystery itself, please consider leaving a comment with your own theories. What details about this case resonate most with you, and what explanations have you found most plausible or most unsettling? Your insights help continue the conversation around these enduring enigmas. In the years following the murders, the farm itself became a macabre tourist attraction, drawing morbidly curious visitors from across Bavaria. The local authorities, disturbed by this ghoulish spectacle and perhaps hoping to erase the physical reminder of the horror, eventually decided to demolish the farm in 1923, just over a year after the killings. All the buildings were razed to the ground, and the debris was dumped into a nearby sinkhole. Today, nothing remains of Hinterkaifeck but a small memorial cross, almost hidden by the trees.
The physical site of the tragedy was obliterated, but the memory and the questions lingered, refusing to be buried.
One wonders if destroying the place helped or hindered the closure the community desperately needed. Decades passed, but the case never truly went cold. Throughout the 20th century, investigators continued to re-examine the evidence, or what little remained of it. In 2007, students from the Polizia Accademia in Fürstenfeldbruck, a police academy, undertook a project to revisit the Hinterkaifeck murders using modern criminal investigation techniques. They re-interviewed surviving witnesses, reanalyzed old statements, and built psychological profiles. Their conclusion, while not identifying a specific killer, confirmed that a single perpetrator was highly likely. They also concluded that the original investigation had failed to account for a critical detail. The killer might have intended to remain on the farm permanently after the murders, suggesting a deeply personal motive rather than a mere robbery. This modern review, while unable to solve the historical puzzle, reaffirmed the meticulous nature of the crime and the killer's audacious post-murder actions. The single unanswered question that echoes through the decades is not just who did it, but why did they stay? What kind of mind, after committing such an atrocity, would then calmly feed the animals, eat meals, and live for days in the house with 6 dead bodies? It's this chilling postscript, more than the murders themselves, that elevates Hinterkaifeck from a mere crime to a profound psychological terror. It speaks to a level of cold calculation, of utter detachment that few can comprehend. Was it an act of defiance, a desire to maintain appearances for as long as possible, or a deranged satisfaction in controlling the scene of their own grotesque masterpiece? The perpetrator's actions after the killings seem to defy conventional criminal motives. This particular facet of the Hinterkaifeck case is what truly differentiates it from countless other unsolved murders, placing it in a league of its own for its unsettling implications about human nature. The chilling reality of the killer's continued presence on the farm, not just for hours but for days, paints a portrait of a criminal mind utterly devoid of typical human fear or remorse. Imagine the silence of the farm in the days following the massacre. The bodies of the Grubers, Victoria, Cecilia, and Josef would have lain where they fell, concealed. Yet, within that same silence, the killer moved. The livestock, 6 cows, a pig, a dog, and chickens all required feeding and care. The Grubenhof was not a small, forgotten shack, it was a functioning farm. Evidence later collected indicated that meals were prepared in the kitchen, meat was cut and eaten, and the fire in the hearth was kept burning. The beds have been slept in. This wasn't merely a perpetrator hiding or fleeing. This was someone inhabiting the space, performing mundane chores amidst the grotesque aftermath of their own violence. This calculated domesticity suggests either an extreme psychopathy, where the act of murder was merely a step in a larger deranged plan, or a desperate attempt to maintain a facade of normalcy, perhaps to deflect suspicion, though for whom, given the isolation of the farm, remains a vexing question. This sustained presence transforms the crime from a simple act of violence into a protracted act of psychological dominance. The murderer wasn't just taking lives, they were usurping an entire existence for however brief a period. What thoughts occupied this person as they went about their tasks? Did they feel a perverse satisfaction, a sense of ownership over the lives they had just extinguished and the property they now controlled? This extended stay implies a certain intimate knowledge of the farm's routines, perhaps even a familiarity with its layout, suggesting someone who had spent time there before. The normalcy of the post-murder activities, feeding the animals, tending to the house, stands in stark contrast to the brutality that preceded it. It's a paradox that confounds motive. Why commit such a savage act only to then settle into the victim's life, even temporarily? This is not the hurried escape of a thief, nor the frantic flight of a vengeful lover. It's something far more deliberate and terrifying. This chilling insight into the killer's post-murder actions on the farm forces us to confront a darkness few can truly comprehend. What kind of monstrous intent do you believe could drive someone to such a prolonged act of macabre domesticity? Share your thoughts below. To fully grasp the horror that culminated in the events of March 31, 1922, one must trace back the unsettling incidents that preceded it, moments that, in hindsight, were chilling harbingers. The footsteps in the title are not merely a metaphor. They refer to tangible, unexplained events that plagued the Gruber family in the weeks and months leading up to their demise, painting a picture of a household under silent, insidious siege. Months before the murders, the long-term maid had fled the farm, claiming the house was haunted. She spoke of strange voices and unearthly noises emanating from the attic. Her departure left the Grubers in need of help, a vulnerability that would soon be tragically exploited. Her replacement, Maria Baumgartner, arrived just hours before the killings, only to be one of the 6 victims. Then, just days before the massacre, Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, made a profoundly unsettling discovery. Deep snow had fallen, covering the ground uniformly. As he returned from the nearby village of Kaifeck, he noticed a set of footprints leading from the edge of the forest directly to the farm's back door. The unsettling detail was that there were no corresponding footprints leading away from the house. Someone had walked to the farm and seemingly vanished into thin air within its confines. This was not a casual trespass. It was a deliberate, concealed approach. Around the same time, Gruber recounted finding a house key that had mysteriously appeared, placed on a fence post near the entrance. It was not one of his keys, nor did it belong to anyone he knew. The key, an object typically signifying access and security, became a symbol of compromised boundaries. A further disturbing incident involved the discovery of a newspaper, not purchased by the family, in the attic. This small detail spoke volumes. Someone had been in their private space, observing, waiting, reading. The attic, traditionally a place of storage and forgotten things, was now a potential hiding spot, a vantage point for a predator. These weren't isolated incidents. The family also reported hearing regular, inexplicable footsteps in the attic above their living quarters. These weren't rats. They were distinct, deliberate footsteps, as if someone was pacing, watching, listening. Andreas Gruber himself went up to investigate on multiple occasions, but each time he found nothing. The sounds would cease as he ascended the stairs, only to resume once he had returned below. This prolonged psychological torment, the slow realization that an unseen entity was sharing their home, must have been a terrifying ordeal. It created an atmosphere of pervasive dread, a subtle erosion of safety and privacy that tragically the family couldn't escape. They were being stalked, not from a distance, but from within the very walls of their home. The community of Hinterkaifeck, a small hamlet near Wangen, was close-knit. Such odd occurrences would surely have been discussed, perhaps dismissed as overactive imaginations or local superstitions. Yet the persistent nature of these events, culminating in the footprints in the snow, suggested a far more tangible and sinister presence. This chilling insight into the killer's post-murder actions on the farm forces us to confront a darkness few can truly comprehend. What kind of monstrous intent do you believe could drive someone to such a prolonged act of macabre domesticity? Share your thoughts below. To fully grasp the horror that culminated in the events of March 31, 1922, one must trace back the unsettling incidents that preceded it, moments that, in hindsight, were chilling harbingers. The footsteps in the title are not merely a metaphor. They refer to tangible, unexplained events that plagued the Gruber family in the weeks and months leading up to their demise, painting a picture of a household under silent, insidious siege. Months before the murders, the long-term maid had fled the farm, claiming the house was haunted. She spoke of strange voices and unearthly noises emanating from the attic. Her departure left the Grubers in need of help, a vulnerability that would soon be tragically exploited. Her replacement, Maria Baumgartner, arrived just hours before the killings, only to be one of the 6 victims. Then, just days before the massacre, Andreas Gruber, the patriarch, made a profoundly unsettling discovery. Deep snow had fallen, covering the ground uniformly.
As he returned from the nearby village of Kaifeck, he noticed a set of footprints leading from the edge of the forest directly to the farm's back door. The unsettling detail was that there were no corresponding footprints leading away from the house. Someone had walked to the farm and seemingly vanished into thin air within its confines. This was not a casual trespass. It was a deliberate, concealed approach. Around the same time, Gruber recounted finding a house key that had mysteriously appeared, placed on a fence post near the entrance. It was not one of his keys, nor did it belong to anyone he knew. The key, an object typically signifying access and security, became a symbol of compromised boundaries. A further disturbing incident involved the discovery of a newspaper, not purchased by the family, in the attic. This small detail spoke volumes. Someone had been in their private space, observing, waiting, reading. The attic, traditionally a place of storage and forgotten things, was now a potential hiding spot, a vantage point for a predator. These weren't isolated incidents. The family also reported hearing regular, inexplicable footsteps in the attic above their living quarters. These weren't rats. They were distinct, deliberate footsteps, as if someone was pacing, watching, listening. Andreas Gruber himself went up to investigate on multiple occasions, but each time he found nothing. The sounds would cease as he ascended the stairs, only to resume once he had returned below. This prolonged psychological torment, the slow realization that an unseen entity was sharing their home, must have been a terrifying ordeal. It created an atmosphere of pervasive dread, a subtle erosion of safety and privacy that tragically the family couldn't escape. They were being stalked, not from a distance, but from within the very walls of their home. The community of Hinterkaifeck, a small hamlet near Wangen, was close-knit. Such odd occurrences would surely have been discussed, perhaps dismissed as overactive imaginations or local superstitions. Yet the persistent nature of these events, culminating in the footprints in the snow, suggested a far more tangible and sinister presence.
The murderer was not just an intruder. They were a phantom, a ghost in the machine of the Gruber household, systematically undermining their sense of security before unleashing the final brutal act. The official investigation that followed the discovery of the bodies was, by modern standards, a catalog of missed opportunities and procedural missteps, a stark contrast to the meticulousness of the killer. When the neighbors, concerned by the family's absence, finally forced their way onto the farm, they were met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Their immediate reaction, understandably, was shock and a desire to help, but this led to the inadvertent contamination of the crime scene. Dozens of villagers traipsed through the house, touching objects, moving things, and altering what little forensic evidence might have existed. The initial police response was equally hampered by a lack of experience with such a brutal, complex crime. Local police arrived, conducted initial interviews, but crucial steps like securing the perimeter, photographing the scene extensively, and meticulously collecting physical evidence were either poorly executed or entirely overlooked. The bodies, discovered in the barn and inside the house, were examined, but without the benefit of modern forensic science, much of the nuanced information they held was lost. The murder weapon, identified as a mattock, a heavy farming tool, was found on the premises, but any trace evidence on it would have been compromised by handling. The investigators quickly developed a theory of robbery, a common motive for rural crimes. However, a significant amount of money was found undisturbed on the farm, contradicting this simple explanation. This early misdirection, coupled with the assumption that the killer had fled immediately, prevented a deeper exploration of the living in the house theory at the outset. The police focused on external threats, drifters, or known criminals, while the person of interest might have been someone intimately connected to the community or even the family. Over 100 suspects were interviewed in the subsequent months and years. These interviews often relied on conjecture, local gossip, and personal animosities rather than hard evidence. Many individuals with grudges against Andreas Gruber, who was known to be a difficult and sometimes abrasive man, became suspects. This included former neighbors, business associates, and even close family members or acquaintances. Among the most frequently discussed suspects was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor who had discovered the bodies. He had previously had an affair with Victoria Gabriel and was believed by some to be the father of her younger son, Joseph. Schlittenbauer had a key to the farm, which he claimed was given to him by Victoria. His initial behavior and his detailed knowledge of the house layout raised suspicions for some, but a definitive link to the murders was never established. He was cleared. Other theories pointed to Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had reportedly died in the war years earlier. Some believed he might have faked his death and returned for revenge, but no credible evidence ever supported this dramatic scenario. The list of suspects also included a pair of tramps, Joseph Bartel and Anton Gump, who were rumored to be in the area. Bartel allegedly confessed to a cellmate years later, but this testimony was deemed unreliable. The brothers Carl and Andreas S. were also considered due to their involvement in a similar crime, but were never conclusively linked. Each lead eventually dissolved into ambiguity, lacking the concrete evidence needed for an indictment. Considering the myriad of missteps and the sheer number of potential suspects, it's clear the initial investigation faced immense challenges.
If you were a detective brought onto this cold case today, what specific aspect, be it a particular suspect, a piece of evidence, or an overlooked detail, would you pursue first, armed with modern forensic tools? The sheer number of investigations, both official and unofficial, spanning decades, all culminating in the same void of an unsolved case, only deepens the enigma of Hinterkaifeck. The farm itself, with its horrific history, was eventually torn down in 1923, just a year after the murders. Its stones were scattered, its memory perhaps intended to be erased from the landscape. But the earth, as it often does, retained its secrets, and the story refused to die. The absence of a clear motive, a definitive killer, or even a conclusive theory has allowed the case to fester in the collective consciousness, becoming a dark legend whispered in Bavaria. What Hinterkaifeck truly exposes is not just the limits of criminal investigation in its era, but the darker, more unsettling aspects of human nature. The murder itself was brutal, but the killer's subsequent actions, living among the dead, tending the farm, the calculated defiance of detection, speak to a coldness that challenges comprehension. It forces us to ask, what kind of monster is capable of such sustained, casual cruelty? Was it an act of revenge, so profound and deeply personal that the perpetrator wanted to savor the aftermath? Was it a desire for control, to utterly dominate a family and their space even after their lives were extinguished? Or was it something far more primal, a breakdown of empathy so complete that the victims became mere objects in a larger, deranged narrative? The lack of a resolution has left an open wound, not just for the descendants of the victims, but for anyone who encounters the case. It serves as a stark reminder that some evils can truly go unpunished, that some questions about human depravity may never find an answer. The enduring fascination with Hinterkaifeck lies precisely in this unsettling ambiguity. It is a story where the shadows refuse to recede, where the whispers of the dead are never silenced by the light of justice. The unsettling implications about human nature extend beyond the killer to the community itself. Was there truly no one who knew something, who saw something, who suspected something? The lingering possibility of local complicity, or at least a deep-seated fear that prevented witnesses from coming forward, adds another layer of disquiet. In a small village, secrets are hard to keep, yet this secret has held for over a century. The story of Hinterkaifeck is a chilling tableau of isolation, paranoia, and unspeakable violence. A puzzle with too many missing pieces and a perpetrator who disappeared into the historical mist as completely as the footprints in the snow. It reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not supernatural specters, but flesh and blood humans whose motives remain forever shrouded in darkness.
And perhaps that is the most unsettling implication of all. The silence around Hinterkaifeck has endured for over a century, defying all attempts at resolution. Do you believe there are still secrets buried deep within this case, waiting to be uncovered? Or is true justice for the Gruber family and their household forever out of reach? The Hinterkaifeck murders stand as a grim monument to the enduring power of the unknown. 6 lives were extinguished, not just brutally, but with an eerie sense of methodical purpose, then violated further by the killer's continued presence among them. The farm, which had first whispered of an unseen intruder with its creaking floorboards and phantom footsteps, ultimately fell silent, taking its secrets to the grave. It reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not supernatural specters, but flesh and blood humans whose motives remain forever shrouded in darkness. And perhaps that is the most unsettling implication of all. The silence around Hinterkaifeck has endured for over a century, defying all attempts at resolution. Do you believe there are still secrets buried deep within this case, waiting to be uncovered? Or is true justice for the Gruber family and their household forever out of reach? The Hinterkaifeck murders stand as a grim monument to the enduring power of the unknown. 6 lives were extinguished, not just brutally, but with an eerie sense of methodical purpose, then violated further by the killer's continued presence among them. The farm, which had first whispered of an unseen intruder with its creaking floorboards and phantom footsteps, ultimately fell silent, taking its secrets to the grave. It remains a stark reminder that some mysteries, born of human darkness and compounded by the frailties of early investigations, are destined to endure, forever challenging our understanding of motive, depravity, and the elusive nature of justice. The story of Hinterkaifeck is not just a tale of murder, but a testament to how profoundly a crime can shake the foundations of a community, leaving a chilling void that even a century of speculation cannot fill. It forces us to confront the terrifying possibility that sometimes the monster truly does vanish into the night, leaving only questions in its wake. This crime, so cold and so complete, leaves us with a lingering chill. If the details of Hinterkaifeck have stayed with you, I encourage you to subscribe to Veritas Crime. By joining our community, you can ensure you never miss another deep dive into the cases that continue to baffle and intrigue us, those stories where truth is often stranger and far more horrifying than fiction.